Hey team players, and welcome to another edition of Local Football Flavor. As my co-host Bob is getting ready to join us here, we are going to be starting off with the best bets. And one of the things that certainly make us unique compared to other gambling sites that you see out there, first and foremost, is that we believe in the model that the market is always right. And rather than us being the ones to try to project and cut off the market and do our own interjections, we come up with the market's going to tell us. Overall, 62.5% across the season, which is basically impossible. We got a lot of great bets for you here. Bob, we're glad that we get my co-host in here and make some awesome stuff happen here today, Bob. So
yeah, I've
I
certainly
have
got
more bets today than I think we have in any game the whole year. So much instability, so much craziness. It's going to affect us in all kinds of corners, Bob. So where do you want to start this party?
Well, I want to start with the actual party that's happening here in my room, where the fire alarm light keeps flickering. So it's very annoying. It's very, very annoying. So I'm just kind of
as long as it's silent, I guess it's all good.
silent now, but this is fun. Yeah, I mean, where I think we should start. I mean, there's been a lot of change in the last week. And some of that change is important, and some of that change is not so much important. But a lot of trades and a lot of things that we thought were going to happen did not happen in the NFL this week. And one of the things that we noticed is that Washington, among other teams, were selling players.
Well, you should.
That the Raiders as an organization cleaned house at the top. And so I would like to start actually with the Raiders and then jump into Washington for a moment, because the Raiders presents us with an interesting situation from a fantasy perspective and from just a divisional matchup kind of perspective, right?
Sure.
So we know that McDaniels, as a play caller with this team, they weren't really going anywhere with the personnel that they had at quarterback. Now, this is a shame because we know that Josh Jacobs is talented. We know that Devontae Adams is talented, and we know that Jacoby Myers is talented, right? And so we look at this team as a whole from their skill players positions, plus Michael Mayer, and you're saying, well, a better quarterback should be able to lead them to a better record. But we're not entirely sure that Aiden O'Connell is a better quarterback than Jimmy G. We have seen...
We're also not totally sure Jimmy G's healthy.
Right? We've seen tape where Aiden O'Connell can push the ball downfield a little bit better than Jimmy G has this year. And the knock on Jimmy G has always been that he can't throw the ball downfield, but the numbers say that he can.
He just doesn't do it enough. He doesn't throw enough passes. Is the bottom line.
It's a unique situation. And in this unique situation, McDaniel has now been fired. The GM has been let go. And we are now with, a guy in Pierce that has said that he's grown up with the Raiders his whole life. He's ready to coach them. And we have a play caller that we don't know how they call plays. So
I do know that play. I know it based upon the answer that the press release said. I grew up with Raiders my whole life. That means one simple fact.
What I know,
we're throwing the ball downfield and we're running it hard. That's Raiders football.
What I know is going to happen is that Josh Jacobs is probably going to feast over the next couple of weeks at the very minimum. And Devontae Adams is going to feast at the very least.
Sure do.
And whether the Raiders win games as an organization or not is yet to be seen. But their defense shows some promise with Max Crosby at the very least
Max Crosby's great. I'm not fighting it. Max Crosby, but he's the only person on the team. And actually, as we're having this Raiders conversation, let me bring them up because they're involved in one of our bets this week. Raiders are hosting the Giants in what all accounts is going to be no one's going to watch that 4:00 game. Who cares? I get it. But that line for the over-under is at 37. And each of those defenses let up 23 points a game. Now, granted, the offenses suck. I'm not fighting that. But we're projecting this game to come in at nearly at 41. which is a virtual 4-point edge on the over. I think it's going to hit big time, and for two reasons here. First is the Raiders in Tennessee now, because I did watch Tennessee's game tape with Levis because I thought he'd come up a lot today, and I still think he will. Is that they have the right system in place for the Raiders to be effective with the way that team is built. You have to throw the ball deep downfield, ideally in play action, which was supposed to be Jimmy G's specialty, and they didn't play action because they were afraid to get the ball running. And when we look at the way the season progressed in Vegas, they wanted to go all in on Jacobs, and because of Jacobs' offseason, he wasn't ready. So they were averaging no yardage on the ground, no nothing, and everyone started just saying, well, all right, well, if you're stupid and going to do it, do it. And then they also realized if we double team Devontae Adams, Jimmy G won't throw him the ball. Unless it's a scripted required play, Jimmy G will not throw Devontae Adams the ball. So as a result, you should be fired. Your two best weapons, you're not
100%.
getting anything out of. So
100%.
The Raiders now are going to be – this is how I project how this is going to look. It might not be week one implemented, but long run's going to look like this. Jacoby Myers is going to be flying down the field 60% of the plays, if not more. Adams is going to own the intermediate, and a power running game is going to present itself. That is what I project Raiders football will be. It's what it should be. And, doing the segue to the Titans, the one who's going to feast from all the changes is Henry, because they now have a system in place that throw the ball downfield, back those safeties up. Now there's only 7 people in the box for the best running back of my generation, and it's going to be awesome.
So let's. I mean, I'm not willing to crown him yet. But
I am. I'm willing to crown the Henry the King again. Texas is back, baby.
Will Levis had an incredible performance in that game this past week, and he looked like the passer that the Titans need. And Tannehill, I mean, they were talking in the news this past week about if Tannehill's healthy, Tannehill's playing, and that seems absolutely absurd to me, because Tannehill has looked like garbage for the majority of this season, and the majority of last season he was hurt, and the season before that he was good enough to take the Titans to an average record, right? But Will Levis, in just this short period of time, I know there's no film in the NFL that's on Levis right now, but what he showed with DeAndre Hopkins is amazing.
Yes.
And what Derrick Henry did in that game was what we want Derrick Henry to do, because teams are not stacking the box against Derrick Henry anymore. At least in that game, they did not have to stack the box as much because they had to respect the pass. It opened up the field for Hopkins, and we saw less Spears, because Spears was not needed to do what he had been doing under Tannehill. So if things stay the status quo with Levis, this is a team that could win that division. And it wouldn't be a surprise if they were.
Well, those 3 games back on the Jags, it's going to be hard to catch Jacksonville.
It wouldn't be crazy to say that they would be competitive enough to win the division, but they might at least get into a wild card spot if Levis stays in, and if Levis is able to keep doing what he's able to do. Because
the one thing I do want to bring up,
it's crazy.
The one thing I do want to bring up with Levis is that he did definitely benefit from the no one knew what I was going to do, and they didn't trust him to throw it over top. And when Tennessee allowed him to, Devontae Adams was so open, it was stupid.
You mean Hopkins?
Yeah, sorry, Hopkins. Yeah. Hopkins was so open that shouldn't happen on an NFL film, and flat out, he didn't miss him. So when we look at that, I think it's something that's great. So first fantasy question of the day, Deontay Johnson or Amari Cooper at your flex. Thank you for hitting us up here, Bryce. So obviously Deontay is playing here tonight. Short game against those Titans, and Amari Cooper is going to be in Cleveland, who's playing Arizona at home. And when I look at this, and this is something that I've been bringing up with Amari Cooper the entire season, the guy falls apart when the starting temperature is below 65 degrees. He just flat out does not perform. And because of that, I am saying trade Amari for as much as you can right now, because I don't believe that Amari Cooper is going to be a long run projection. I think he's right in the same category as Moss,
let's stay to
in
the
that
question,
he's going to be
Joe.
diminishing asset.
So
So
let's stay to the question.
For me, it's a no doubt. Deontay Johnson got 15 targets plus last week. He as unproductive as it was, when you're getting that much action, you have to go with him, because there's a chance in a PPR league he brings in 10 of them. By default, you're going to get at least 60 yards. Boom, you got 16 points on Thursday night. Because let's face it, the Pittsburgh Steelers might be the most uncreative offense in NFL history. They tip their hand what they're going to do. It's force the ball to Deontay, and I'd ride him all day, because on top of it, I don't think Cooper's going to do anything. I definitely think he's going to decline more and more as the season goes on. I would definitely look at moving him. So, yeah, Bryce, we'll get to your second question here.
Bryce, I do want to touch on that with Joe and Derek. We will get to your question, and we'll get to Bryce's second question here. Bryce, I'm on the same side as Joe on this one as well. Deontay's target share is great.
Stupid.
This game is, these Thursday games they've been scoring points recently, but the Tennessee Titans and the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Tennessee Titans and the Pittsburgh Steelers are not teams that typically score a lot of points. I don't think Deontay will get a touchdown, but I do think his volume will be really, really incredible. Now, when we look at the Browns over the last several games, Amari has done enough in these games to make you want to start him. 6 receptions for 89 yards. You go back to the game against the Colts that they won, and you're saying, okay, he did not get enough targets in that game to even say that he's worth starting. I go with Deontay Johnson just because I think that this game is going to be won in the intermediate, and Deontay Johnson thrives in the intermediate routes. Like Joe said, you could easily see 60 yards from Deontay Johnson, 8 catches at the very least, with the possibility of a touchdown and more yards against this Titans defense. And Amari could easily do the same, but I think with Deontay tonight, I think it's almost a certainty that is going to happen.
Yeah, you're going to get target share of Deontay. The whole question is,
thanks for joining me on mine.
Does he convert on them a lot more than he did last week? So, Derek, we're just going to get on the questions and orders, guys, as you send them to us. 10-team half PPR. Those are always fun. Send Olave and Mostert. Ooh, for J. Jeff and Jones. You're 6-2. I like that. All right, so this is going to dive into the starting question here, Derek, of how do we really feel about J. Jeff moving forward? And I needed to start with, I love that the Vikings got Dobbs. Not necessarily for Dobbs' talent's sake, but for the fact that they're saying we're not quitting on the year and we're moving forward. And for me, that pushes forward into wanting to have J. Jeff. Obviously, this is a much more talented team in Minnesota than Dobbs was at Arizona. And what I'm thinking here is that J. Jeff is not going to be the same J. Jeff as Kirk Cousins. I don't think that's realistic to expect. But I believe even at 80% of that, which I think is more than reasonable, he's going to be incredible down the playoff stretch. And then we look at what you're giving up here. You're giving up Olave and Mostert for J. Jeff and Jones. So if I break this down to the best 2 players right now, and Bryce, what I believe will be moving forward is going to be, I would do that. You have the room with having Eckler and Kamara. You're going to get to the point when Mostert breaks relatively quickly. You're not going to be able to get anything for him. And the fact that you have Lamb, Hollywood, and McLaurin, you can absorb J. Jeff on your bench. I would do it.
So, Derek, I'm on the same side. We loved Olave heading into this past week, but it is clear that he has a lead shoulders, lead hands, lead toes.
Still hurt.
At least this season right now. He's not giving you that. He's not giving you that return on a weekly basis. You're starting Lemon McLaurin most likely every week. Palmer is a good spot starter in there. Hollywood is a good starter in there as well.
Always reflects.
This gives you the potential to boom if J. Jeff comes back. You're 6-2. You're almost there at the playoff number that you need to be at. I say do the trade. Wait around. At worst, Aaron Jones. I don't really like Aaron Jones right now because I don't really like the Packers players right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that it's a fair enough trade that it would work out for you as well. So Bryce, your 2 comments here. Diego, we'll get to your question, and Amon, I really want to talk about that trade. So is Gibbs the running back 1 or Montgomery coming back to the Lions? I think Gibbs is going to be the number 1 back. Now, Montgomery could slide back into a role at the very beginning of his coming back of a goal line person. So it could limit the number of targets and catches and just runs that Gibbs will get in that zone. And so Montgomery will still have value, but it's very, very clear that Gibbs has performed to what the coach wanted. He's a coach's guy. That's what they want him to do. He's the number 1 now, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, don't get me wrong. It does not make him vulture-proof. We're not trying to imply that at all. But Gibbs is going to be the go-to guy going up and down that field. Again, you don't use a first-round pick, let alone their first-round pick, on a running back and then not use him. They started the year with Monty because they wanted to have some veteran stability, but that's there. Amaz back. What's up, baby?
I love this. I love this trade. I love this trade. Now, it might sound crazy, and Diego, we'll get to your trade, and we'll get to Cap's trade too.
I love when you get the 2 back and a 2-1. Or 2 and 3.
This trade looks a bit crazy, but here's the thing. ETN has a fantastic playoff schedule.
Sure does.
And Devonta Smith, despite him not showing out every single week, he performed last week, and that is a ceiling style.
Oh, Philly's turning on, baby.
McLaurin's numbers are always about average, right? We've talked to McLaurin over several weeks, and he's always been in your should I start him or sit him kind of category. 8 receptions, 80 yards, 8 receptions, 60 yards. It's always somewhere in there. Swift, I like Swift. He's productive. He's on a good offense, but they were doing some stupid stuff with Gainwell last week, so maybe they're going to keep doing stupid stuff. And Swift's goal line carries aren't there. ETN's are. And D-Hop with Levis looked really great, as we had been talking about earlier in the episode. But you get 2 commodities, one being ETN that you know can go off for 102 touchdowns because he's done it before, and Smith, who has a ceiling of like 30, 35 points on any given week. McLaurin will
rediscover him.
McLaurin will rarely get you 35 yards, and we're yet to see what Levis will do on a long-term season. I think you got an incredible 2 pieces for a possible playoff run here.
Yeah, and the other part is for the playoff run, you're going to take off because as we started with the beginning, Levis looks great in his first performance out there when the defensive coordinator clearly was not thinking he'd push the ball downfield at all. They start game planning for him. He's not going to stay at that level. I'm not going to say he's a bust. I think he's exactly what Tennessee needs. But I would say Hop probably just gave you his best game of the year.
And Bryce, to your comment here, Deontay has to be the play. I mean, with Ayuk and Christian Kirk on the bye, you got a really good start. Adams is going to get force-fed. Thielen always gets fed. That starting Adams, Thielen, and Deontay is a great 3 combination this week. So let's get to Diego's question here. Trade Pickens and Rishi Rice for Ridley this week. 4 for 4, full PPR. Don't need either Pickens or Rice this week.
Is it a keeper league?
Yeah,
Diego, let us know if it's a keeper league or not.
That's a tough one for me. I am really high on Rishi Rice, and I'm really low on Calvin Ridley. And Pickens is a solid flex play on a given week-to-week basis. If you're still here, tell us your team. We'll give some more advice once we know the rest of your team.
Yeah, Diego, my initial thought is why I appreciate that you don't need to play Pickens or Rice this week, which is great. I believe that the upside of both of those 2 players is there. I firmly believe at some point the Steelers are going to realize that George Pickens is more talented than Deontay Johnson. He is. It's
You're welcome, Derek.
Eventually, they're going to realize that. I believe Pickens is going to be an ascending asset as the season goes on. I also believe the exact same thing is true with Rice. You see his target share growing. And I'm not sure Ridley is going to grow much more than where he's at.
Well,
So my
here's
surface
how
is why I
high.
appreciate you have extra assets. I just don't think Ridley's the one to pick up.
Here's how high Joe is. Joe and I were talking about a league that he's in. He's in a, I think it's like 10-team dynasty.
10-team league where there's no waivers, so you draft 30 rounds,
he's got
and you can
Rice
keep
as
one player from each position, but 3 rounds higher.
He's got Rice as a low pick, and he's, we think that in every season, because he's on a great team with a great quarterback, I mean, there's nowhere to go but up for Rice. So Cap, yes. The answer for me is absolutely 100%, without a shadow of a doubt. Yes.
Get Kelce and Paul. Yeah, get Kelce and Paul.
Travis Kelce is beyond elite. What's your record, by the way?
Who's the guy with Kelce and Pollard that's offering you that? That's pretty one-sided.
If you're getting Kelce and Pollard, that is clearly the two pieces that are healthy in the trade. Now, Pollard, his rest of season rankings and a lot of rankings that I've seen is hovering between like 12 and 15, maybe even a little bit less than that. He hasn't, the last 2 weeks, he hasn't performed. He's been getting less targets like in the pass game, and they haven't been using him in positive game script, which is really odd. But he is still at worst, he's an RB2 at worst.
Well, to go in I would do the trade with Jeff and Goddard for Kelce straight up. Yeah. I guess that's my answer. Because I know what Kelce is going to give me in the playoffs. I know he can win me playoff games just with winning that tight end matchup. As great as Jeff is, and he is, he's not guaranteed to beat the next tight end by 6 points. Kelce will almost guarantee to give you that in the playoffs. And that's an edge that wins you championships.
And they had a bad week this week because Mahomes was sick. We don't see that happening again. I mean, it could very easily that he could go for 102 touchdowns on any given day with a floor of maybe 8 points, but his highest ceiling is like 36 points, which is crazy. And Jefferson's not helping you right now. Goddard's average, and Montgomery isn't helping you right now either. But could turn out to help you in the future. But Kelce and Pollard will help you now. Pollard already had the bye. Kelce's bye is coming up. These two players are going to help you if you need to get into the playoffs. If you're already in the playoffs, there's
never a bad time to get Travis Kelce.
If you're already in the playoffs, you should still go and get Kelce because Kelce's one of the most. Yeah, you should go out and get Kelce. I mean, this is we love going out and get Jefferson, but you're going out to get Kelce and with Pollard. So your full roster here. Diego, we'll get back to your question. Yes. Sam Howe has been lighting
it up. You got yourself a stacked roster there.
Paul, Kyron, Gibbs, and Montgomery, Brian Robinson Jr. Yeah, those players perform on a week-to-week basis on average. Jefferson, Kupp, St. Brown. You don't need Jefferson. Kupp and St. Brown will take you to the playoffs with Palmer. Judy,
and you got enough running backs to give you the flexes you need.
Yeah, Judy hasn't I'd really absolutely do that. Ingram and Goddard. I mean, Kelce gives you a really high advantage over Ingram and Goddard. And then this also makes sure that when Kyron comes back, you could flex Kyron instead of flexing Jerry Jeudy or Palmer because you're putting Pollard in there at your running back position. So you'd go Hall and Pollard probably for the majority of the season, or Hall and Pollard and Gibbs. Any combination. Your team is good, and you're 5-3 for a reason, and you're making your team better by getting Kelce and Pollard. So
no way around that. All right, Diego, back to you here. So it's not a keeper league. So keeping Rice in Pickens is there. You have Deontay, so you want to get rid of one of them. You start. All right, so you have a lot of options here. Going back to your trade, first off, I'd rather move Deontay than Pickens. Just from a pure watching the tape, Pickens is more talented than Deontay. He is. Despite the fact Deontay is getting the volume now. You might be able to get him out at its highest peak value by moving Johnson. If you're probably not going to trade him before kickoff, but moving Johnson this season or this week rather. So I would lean on keeping Pickens over Johnson's starting point. The second thing is I want to aim a lot higher than Ridley. I believe Ridley is in the same tier as those two. And I want to lean towards a situation where, quite frankly, Diego, you might fall into a spot where you don't need to stack. Your team is stacked. Go after a Jeff. Go after someone who maybe has the Kareem Williams that you can absorb the fact he's injured, and then when they come back, boom, instant upgrade that's going to give you massive value. And J. Jeff and Williams are certainly in that category. That would be where I would lean to go in that way, especially if it's not a keeper league. There's no reason really to keep Kareem Williams on your roster if he's not coming back until the playoff run anyway. So you have the ability to absorb it, Diego. That's how I would play it.
Diego, here's to your point, and I think Joe's absolutely right. I would, if I could, shoot higher than Ridley. Ridley's value is really low, but we've seen why his value is really low. He's not getting volume. He's not getting his routes are towards the sidelines. There's no room for him to work. There's no room for him to get yak. It's just not happening for Ridley right now. Your team, just as you say you don't need Pickens and Rashee Rice, you don't need Calvin Ridley. And,
it's true.
And Ridley with Puka, DJ Moore, and Lamb, you're never gonna start Ridley over those three in my mind. Maybe DJ Moore, maybe not. Right here, Joe.
My bad.
So where I see this at, Diego, then is that if you're trading these two or lower assets here, I would shoot for a position of more need because your wide receiver room doesn't look like it has a need. CD Puka and DJ Moore and Deontay Johnson are good enough to fill 3 wide receivers and 1 flex. It seems to me that maybe there could be a need at tight end or maybe a need at running back. And I would shoot for one of them because at this point in time, Pickens and Rashee Rice, to me, have way more value than Ridley. And I think over the next 3 weeks, those 2 players are going to have more value than Ridley. And these next 3 weeks is crunch time for playoffs if you're trying to make your way in or keep your position in the playoffs. And I don't think Ridley's going to help you do that.
Yeah, and we look at some players that we believe are going to be on that ascending path to get you there. We've mentioned a couple of them already. Devontae Smith is certainly on that list. Pickens is on the increase, and I believe in, and I believe Rice
Pollard,
is too.
I think Pollard is as well because he's a stud, but he's a buy low kind of stud at this point in time. That's fallen from running back 1 to running back 2. It will come. There's going to be something.
You believe in Pollard? I believe in Pollard.
So Cap here. Cap, your team. We love.
This is his opponent.
So this is just another guy in the league. Yeah. Herbie, Etienne, Mixon, Connors, Hunt, Javonte, Hill, AJ Brown, Keenan Allen. That
team has some weaknesses though.
But
I see that it's producing now. As soon as his running back core is going to be a problem in the playoffs, and Keenan Allen's going to return to not scoring touchdowns again. The reason that team's scary as hell is because of AJ Brown and
thanks, Diego. We appreciate
Hill. But
and Thielen.
There's a chance Hill calls off. I mean, he's trying to do something that's impossible, and AJ Brown's actually doing it better than
here's the funny thing, Cap, about that team is that he's probably has the number 1, number 2, and number 3 highest scoring wide receiver in the league. Then he has probably the number 2 or 3 running back in the league, and then he has probably the 3rd highest scoring tight end in the league right now. Great. So yeah, that team right now at this point in time is great. Mixon. Here's the thing about Mixon. Joe and I, we're not huge fans of Joe Mixon, but his schedule looks pretty good. And when you look at his numbers in a PPR league, he's a plotter. He doesn't have any explosiveness. It's really not there. But I looked at his numbers.
He's less talented than Najee Harris is what he is.
He's got a floor of like 5 points on any given week to a ceiling of 20 or higher. Now that ceiling is only going to come once or twice a year.
And it's going to require 2 touchdowns to get there.
And maybe it happens in the playoffs. Connor is hurt. The guy I like on this team that's quietly ascending up people's boards is Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams is looking better than he did at the beginning of the year. He's still coming off the injury. Joe does not trust guys coming off injuries like that.
Not lower body injuries like that. Nope.
But as a 5th guy on this roster, there is a lot this guy has to play with. And your team and his team are.
I like your team more, dude. Just flat out.
There's a lot of a lot of fun stuff going on with him. And Sam Howell, he's balling out recently. So I mean, I looked at it, and I think in my Yahoo league, let me pull up the Yahoo league. I think Sam Howell is like the third best quarterback in the.
It's crazy stupid. Here's the other thing with Sam Howell that he has going in his favor. His defense let up 26 points a game. Like, they're always going to have to be throwing the ball in Washington, and they just got rid of Chase Young. Now,
and Montez Sweat, yeah.
Chase Young, I felt, has been overrated since day one, but Sweat hasn't. And when we look at that Washington team, I know they're playing New England this week, but I'm seeing that being the surprising game. Like, there's points being scored in that because both of the defenses are just so bad. Washington takes a step back, by losing Sweat and dude, I see Howell's going to be chucking it for his life. Like, it feels like every Washington quarterback has been doing for the last 10 years.
Howell in my Yahoo league is the 8th best quarterback. Here's the rankings in the Yahoo league: Allen, Hurts, Tua, Mahomes, Cousins, who's obviously not going to rise anymore, Lamar, Herbie, Howell, and Russ. So that's really gross. There's a couple names missing from that list due to injuries and things like that, but they're going to start rising on that list too. And I think Sam Howell has a team that he's like Joe said, you got to throw it because you're going to be having the ball a little bit more too, because your defense isn't going to be able to stop anybody anymore.
Yeah, you're going to be letting a lot of quick touchdowns is what they're going to be doing. Washington's never had a secondary. Yeah. They basically were protected by a pass rush, and now that it's not there, it's like Washington is making a play for the first pick overall, but unfortunately, they live in a world where Arizona and Chicago are just better at losing than them.
Yeah, and Cap, to your thing here, Kirk Cousins was a big loss, but I think Sam Howell will help you in the short term. Maybe not super long term, but it will definitely help you in the short term. To Trout now. Trout has a question here. Not much of an impact question, you say, but is it worth holding on to Mecole Hardman? I would say, why not? I mean, if your team is solid, there is a lot of uncertainty with the wide receiver situation in Kansas City. Sky Moore doesn't look good.
No.
Kadarius Toney isn't good.
Told you that in the offseason.
Rashee Rice looks great.
He does.
Travis Kelce looks great. And we have seen, and Marquise Valdes-Scantling is who he is. So,
yeah, so let's hit that, Bob. They gave basically nothing for him, starting point. So this isn't like we're believing he's going to step in and take the world on fire. I believe this is more a testament to Valdez and Toomey and Sky Moore. I think Rice is still cemented to be the number 2 receiver when it's all said and done, with Kelce technically being a tight end, but Kelce being the number 1 target game in, game out. I don't think this affects Rice. I think that if you haven't cut Sky Moore already, you definitely need to now. And, that's how I think that this trade means. I'm not even sure that Hartman ends up being a major player and dresses regularly for him. He's just another same category of blah. I mean, that's what they really are.
Yeah, and
Rice is ascending above it.
To Joe's point here, is he worth a stash? Yes, but are you gonna play him over anybody else on your roster in the given week that he does blow up? Probably not. So as we go through bye weeks, is he worth holding on to? Yeah, sure. Why not? Right?
Yeah. Anytime you get one of Mahomes' weapons, it's worth looking into.
Here's what to really look at, bigger picture here, is that if you are in a playoff position at this point in time, you've got to construct that main roster and then have one backup at each position, in my mind. So except for quarterback, maybe. But have one backup at running back once you fill out what you want your starting lineup to be, because come playoff time, you know who you want. You know what your team's going to be able to do. And, if Hardman goes off for 30 points and you started Adams and he got 12 points, you're going to be kicking yourself, but you were never going to start Hardman in the first place. Now,
what Hardman's going to give you is the opportunity for a massive trade down the road. But to Bob's point, you want to have your starters But for the excess guys you have, I want people like Hardman who could be the
Exactly. That's
all or
what I'm
nothing
saying.
explosion.
I'm saying that I would want him because he has that potential to do it, but Hardman is the type of player, sort of like we were saying about Valdez-Scantling, is that when they go off, rarely, and you might even put like Alan Lazard last year in this category too, where you weren't starting him on a regular basis unless it was like your second flex or you had a third flex in the league.
If you're doing a DFS and need to like balance out a roster.
Hardman has that potential, and it's a good, another sneaky ad this week, a real sneaky ad this week, if your league has already not, is Donovan Peoples-Jones. Donovan Peoples-Jones, listen, just went to Detroit. J-Mo has speed, but clearly has a problem with catching the ball.
Yeah.
Khalif Raymond and Josh Reynolds are who they are.
Oh, yeah, and he's sliding into the number 3 immediately. There's no fighting that.
If I'm going on a speculative hold between Hardman and Peoples-Jones,
that's fair.
I might hold Peoples-Jones more than I would hold Hardman, just because Kansas City seems like a two-pony show, and Detroit does not.
That's true.
Detroit feeds lots of different players, and we've seen that.
They also score a lot.
Very interesting question. I love that question. So Tiptoe, thanks for joining us. What's up, guys? I just got offered Pollard and Thielen for Eckler. Oh, God. Okay, so I rub my head because these are 3 players I like a lot. Thielen, because Carolina is going to keep feeding him the ball. And it doesn't really matter if he scores a touchdown or not, because his volume is so incredibly high that unless he just old man breaks down,
which is possible,
he's going to continue.
No problem,
he's you're welcome. He might not continue wide receiver 1 like of the year numbers, obviously, but he could settle in by the end of the year as like wide receiver 10, wide receiver 8, wide receiver 15, somewhere in that range, 8 to 15, and that's going to be super productive. Now, Pollard, I like Pollard. Joe does not. I think Pollard, he's got the goal line carries, but he's not scoring, which is a problem. When we look at goal line carries, the more goal line carries a back has, yes, that's good, but it's also bad because if they're not putting it for touchdown, that means that they're having more carries, but they're not doing anything.
Yeah, they're not converting on them.
So say they have 9 carries, but only 1 touchdown. That's a huge problem because that means 8 times they were trusted to put it in the end zone and they couldn't.
Which means you won't be trusted in the future.
And so when I look at Pollard, I think he has a tremendous opportunity to bounce back if the coaching situation decides they want to use him in the myriad of ways that they've used running backs in the past. Now, Eckler, on the other hand, coming off being injured, he's got a great playoff schedule. An incredible playoff schedule. And the question then comes in at is that, do you need Thielen?
Yeah, that's basically the question.
That's the question for me, because Pollard and Eckler both have a potential for positive regression going forward. Where Eckler's targets are not as what they were in the first place. But do you need Thielen, Tiptoe? That's the question for me. So put your roster in the chat so that we can see what that is, because I would be on the side to accept this trade if I needed Thielen. But again, if you don't, I wouldn't do it because Eckler has a solid playoff schedule.
Hey, Bob, did we miss this trade offer that was thrown here?
Cap, here, sorry about that, Cap. Let's get to it. So you offered an even bigger trade to the guy, and I think he's not opposed to it. I think y'all will like it. Jefferson, Goddard, Montgomery, and Judy for Kelsey, Pollard, and Ridley.
I do like Ridley over Judy, so I like that.
That's kind of sexy there, Cap.
Yeah.
I'm looking at that and seeing, you're getting Kelsey and Pollard. You're giving up. What you're giving up is basically Judy for Ridley.
Essentially.
And the Denver Broncos have said we still want Jerry Jeudy on our team, So we're yet to see what's going to actually happen in Denver. But like we said,
Mims is going to happen.
Like we said to the other person who was talking about trading for Ridley, they did not need Ridley. So that is why we suggested not to pick them up.
But Ridley is an upgrade over Judy, I believe, for the rest of the season. And I would want to be a part of that. So,
Ridley,
yeah, no, you're absolutely right. We do like that trade. And if he's going to accept that, you get Kelsey, you get an upgrade at your receiver. Yeah, dude, I'm doing that all day. And I'm looking at Pollard as a nice afterthought that you could even potentially turn around as a double trade.
And this is the thing about Calvin Ridley, everybody. So everybody knows, and I'm sure you listen to the TikToks and everything that says that Calvin Ridley does better with Zay Jones. But the issue here is that we haven't seen Zay Jones in a long time. Zay Jones is supposed to be coming back and healthy fairly soon. And so maybe there are some positive things to note with that. But ETN looks great. Kirk looks great. Ingram looks great. So, Ridley as an asset is a question mark asset for me on a week-to-week basis. And although I like that trade, Cap, I would have a hard time. At this current level, I would have a hard time starting Ridley over Palmer because Palmer is in a better situation. But come next week, that might change because when Zay Jones comes back, this could be a really good situation for Calvin Ridley. That trade is a potential trade that could get you a far ahead playoff road, and it could get you into the championship because you're getting two of the premier players in the league, although one of them hasn't played like a premier player, and you're giving up a bunch of average players except for Jefferson. And
Cap, I 100% would do that trade.
You have to do it.
Because the other thing is what we talked about earlier with Jefferson without Cousins.
So Dylan and then Chandler here. So
Dylan, I love this question. I personally don't believe it's as close as you think it is, but I'm going to let Bob shoot at this one first for the rest of the season.
Okay. So, all right, this is an interesting one here. Burrow. I love Joe Burrow. And Joe Burrow with Chase and Higgins has started to fire up. They've started to look better and his injury seems to be behind him. His line still is what it is. And Puka, without Stafford, we are yet to see what Puka holds in a Staffordless offense. Now, let's put this into perspective here. They tried to sign John Wolford, and they couldn't because Tampa Bay picked them up in case. And who's the starting quarterback right now for the Rams at this moment in time heading into this week?
Oh, Bob, I should know that. I'm totally blanking it off.
I think it's somewhat, I'm not 100% sure who it is. So even though Olave has looked like he's been lead-handed for a long stretch of time at this moment in time, and I love Joe Burrow, I think rest of the season. Oh yeah, Brett Rippin. Okay, thanks, Dylan. Rest of the season, I go Hurts and Olave, and the reason why Olave, home games in the dome, doesn't have to worry about the weather in the dome. Hurts, worse weather situation, but he rushes for touchdowns. So you're going to, and they move the ball downfield, and he's usually the goal line back. So there's a good chance if Philly's offense keeps soaring that they can do that. Their defense is still bad. The passing defense is still bad, so teams can score on them, and they're going to have to keep pace, and they're going to have to score more. Burrow plays in that still the same worse weather. It's going to start to get real competitive in the AFC North really soon, and those defenses are going to start to turn on. Yes, they play the Steelers again. This is an issue. But this comes down to Puka for me, to be quite honest with you. Puka's quarterback situation is bad. I don't want Brett Rippin as my quarterback. I don't want the John Wolfords of the world, the Brett Rippins of the world as my quarterback. And we know that Cooper Kupp is there, and he's going to get fed as well. And with that, Puka's going to fall back. I go Hurts and Olave rest of the season, and that's just my opinion on that. And we'll get to your trade question there, and we'll get to
Yeah, Bob, I agree with all you. And the one thing I want to add to that for moving forward, Olave is going to heal. Puka doesn't have an upside with his situation of it getting better. But Olave should heal as it gets better. So I would lean much more towards the Hurts and Olave combo.
So we'll get to your trade, Dylan, and we'll get to
you know
Chandler's
what,
trade, and then
Dylan,
we'll
to answer your question there, because you threw up if Stafford gets back, does that matter? It wouldn't have mattered if Stafford was playing regardless, because how much higher Hurts is than Burrow, I believe, will match the gap of Olave and Puka. Hurts is in essentially another world in terms of fantasy quarterbacks right now. So let's jump into Chandler here, and then we'll get into your question here, so we don't.
And we'll get to your trade too, Dylan, and to Caps.
So trade away Fields and Chase for Love, Mixon, and St. Brown.
It's an 18-team PPR league. Oof. So
I do love them all. I don't love Mixon. Mixon to me is the part I'm not loving about this action here. Okay. But again, I do love a Ma. Burrow's basically healthy again, and Chase is going to take off. So this becomes an interesting question. Bob, how are you leaning on that?
Well, it would depend on my other running backs and my other wide receivers. But just on base level here, obviously there's a deficit somewhere on your team. If you're willing to trade one of the premier players in the league, in that first round that we drafted them in, then there's something going on in your team that you want to improve. And it looks like maybe
there's always something.
Looks like the running back situation is something you want to improve. Like I said, Mixon is not a world beater. He will never be explosive, but he's solid. He's rock solid in terms of they get him the ball. He doesn't get in space. He has a floor of 5 to 8 points and a ceiling in the 20s. If you happen to hit him on the ceiling game, great. If not, you're probably going to get about 10 points from him on a week-to-week basis. St. Brown is good for between 13 and 23, maybe even 30 points in a PPR league on a given basis.
Yeah.
Jordan, but here's the thing that I'm concerned about with St. Brown is that with Laporta in the volume situation that we have Laporta in, and with Gibbs showing what he showed, there could be less volume in the long run to keep Amon healthy for the playoffs. So,
so you already have Gibbs, Chandler. If you already have Gibbs, I'm not getting more of that offense.
Yeah,
I'm going to stick with Jamar Chase and Fields, and just hope Fields doesn't get hurt. That's how I would go about it.
Knowing your situation here, and your situation at running back in Ford, Chuba, Zeke, and Gibbs. Gibbs is great. You can't start him this week, obviously. Ford has a question mark going into this situation this week. And then that means that Chuba and Zeke are your starting running backs this week, which I can understand why you want to go out and get Mixon.
Don't do a trade for 1 week, dude. You're going to throw your playoff away.
I wouldn't
do that trade.
If I were you, Chandler, I'd try to find something else. I'd try to find better assets. Because I don't, at this moment in time, the way Jordan Love has played over the past several weeks,
I don't want that.
And Mac Jones, these two players, it's not a true upgrade over them at that position. I think you're losing a lot there. I wouldn't do it. I would try to find something else here. So let's get back to Dylan, and then we'll get to Tingley, Cap, and back to Brad. Oh, yeah. Swap Mixon for Pollard.
I still want to do it. I'm not getting rid of Chase and Fields.
I would try not to.
I think Chase and Fields could win you an 18-man league by themselves. I don't want to get rid of that.
Get rid of Chase.
Yeah. All right. So back to
Dylan
here earlier.
Dylan has a trade question, but just to follow up, Dylan, yes, I think Olave and Hurts is miles better than Puka and Burrow for the rest of the season. I don't think it's close, even though I think Burrow is a fantastic quarterback. So Dylan made a move. He traded Ford, Goddard, and Diggs for Etienne, Hawkinson, Devonta Smith. Absolutely an incredible move.
Oh yeah.
Diggs is my number one wide receiver going into this year. I love Stephon Diggs, but weather in Buffalo does play an issue. Now that weather in Philadelphia also plays an issue too, but you got an elite, talented running back who's getting the ball PPR. He's getting it volume receiving, getting the volume rushing. You have a tight end who
probably is going to finish as tight end 1 or
Josh
close
Dobbs
to it.
has proven that he can throw the ball to tight ends.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he threw it to Trace McBride. Why not TJ Hawkinson?
Who's way better.
Your combo of ETN and CMC is lethal.
So lethal.
And your wide receiver depth is solid as all. I mean, Ayuk and Waddle are incredible options. Flowers, and this will follow up with Cap here about Flowers.
Yeah, because now you're going to have Devontae Smith. It's going to be Devontae Smith, Ayuk, and Waddle. Yeah. That's solid, man. I mean, you can't fight that.
Incredible trade. And, you know, that move will make you push for the playoffs because
you got a chance to win.
ETN and CMC are two of the backs that I think are incredible as we go forward in this year. So let's get to Cap and then Tingley, back to Brad.
I went in the wrong order there. Well, we got Tingley up here. We just kind of hit on Diggs. That's why I want to hit into this. I love Diggs. And I still think he's finishing top 5 despite the weather. Buffalo, by all metrics, is going to finish with a better record than Miami, and Diggs is going to be the one who carries them there when it's all said and done. I mean, I love Diggs moving forward a hell of a lot more than Pollard. But we've been hitting on Pollard on and off.
Yeah, so, I love both these players. Matt, we'll answer your question too. Dylan, we appreciate you as well. Thanks for the question. So I fall on this same thing as Joe. I love Diggs more than Pollard. Of course, rest of the season, I think they both have a chance to do really well. Weather will play a role for Diggs, not so much for Pollard, I think. But, you know, these two players are elite level. Well, Diggs is elite. He's uber elite.
Yes.
Pollard can move there if he starts to get those touchdowns, and he's not getting them. So
I just don't think he will. I think Dallas has realized let's think the land life's better.
So let's go back to Cap, then to Brad, then to
rest of the season, Ridley or Flowers.
We will get to that question, Matt.
So here's the thing. Flowers has become the Mark Andrews of that offense. They're giving him the volume. They're looking at him. It's crappy, short line of scrimmage crap.
I mean, he got 5 catches for like 19 yards last week.
So you're getting volume. You want that. Ridley's the better football player. Let's start with that as a starting point. Situation-wise, he is a better passing quarterback. It just hasn't clicked yet. So rest of the season moving forward, I'm going to lean Ridley because he's a better player. I believe the system is going to figure itself out. And I also believe in the rookie wall. So I think that there's a good chance that Flowers mellows out as the year goes on. I don't worry about him as much in the weather because he came from the north in college, but I do worry about him hitting the rookie wall, which is a thing. And I bring up that weather thing because so much of the NFL is from the SEC. When these guys get to the north and it starts getting crappy this time of the year, it's a thing. Right now, it's 60 degrees in Georgia. It is 30 degrees in Pittsburgh and the AFC North. These are real factors that affect these guys.
Yeah.
That I believe perpetuates the SEC, the SEC window, especially on the rookie wall.
Now, with everything we've said about Ridley, Flowers is the number 1 wide receiver on Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
But the Ravens offense is really weird. And so you look at it and you say, okay, Andrews is an elite option in the red zone. So he's getting the red zone touches there. Gus Edwards also the Gus bus looks actually fairly decent in the red zone. I mean, he doesn't have the long speed, but again, another plotter in the AFC North. It seems like the AFC North is full of them. Justice Hill does have some of that outside speed. Zay Flowers is going to be used as a chain mover moving forward. So similar to Deontay Johnson in my mind, there is going to always be volume there. Whether what he does with that volume, like we said last week, 5 catches for 19 yards is not going to do it. I had him in a parlay last week. I needed 25 yards. did not get 25 yards. Super disappointed after how he had been performing as the year went on. Ridley will continue to be that up and down player in my mind, where the game script might be a Ridley game. I like Flowers rest of the season, but I'm not disagreeing with Joe on anything that he said.
At the end of the day, I look at it like this. Ridley's going to give me a higher ceiling week in, week out. And I'd rather roll the dice, because while Flowers has a floor, I don't think it's going to overwhelm people that, like I said, I don't think that the Flowers is going to end up being better than Ridley.
Yeah.
For all the other reasons.
And Brad, real quick, I think this is a great trade for you. Aaron Jones, I think it's time to give up on the Packers and most of the skill position players for the Packers. Lockett is one of the players that I owned earlier in the season, and he's so wishy-washy to me in terms of production, because
he's getting phased out.
Geno Smith looks around the field, and Jackson Smith looks good. Kenny Walker, Zach Charbonnet are going to be involved. DK Metcalf is a stud. This is a great trade for you, and you have Pollard and Kenneth Walker heading into this home stretch of getting into the playoffs. Kupp and Godwin and Hawk, incredible trade for you. I have no issue with that whatsoever. That's great.
Likewise, man.
And Diego here, going back to your question about getting Ridley and trading the talent that you had. Your running backs are Bijan. Bijan hasn't been doing well.
He's coming back, dude. Don't worry about it.
Gibbs looked great, and Hunt is what he is, and Laporta is a stud at this point in time, and Joe Burrow is elite. So honestly, I would only make a trade if I think I needed to. And at this point in time, I don't really feel like your team needs to trade. I think that if you were going to do anything, it would be to upgrade that third running back in Hunt.
But even then, you're not going to use them.
And to maybe go put Rishi Rice and, Deontay Johnson in a trade to upgrade to a better caliber running back. But those running backs are hard to get.
You're not getting excellent for those two.
You could go after a guy like Pollard, like a lot of our viewers.
Yeah, dude, Diego, I think your best bet actually would be going after Crean Williams, because the guy's hurt. You might go, hey, I can give you something now. I get that if Williams comes back healthy, that this isn't an even trade, but Deontay can get you wins right now.
And Jacob,
I would try to push that. Deontay straight up for Williams. You might be able to get it, and it's a roll of the dice that would drastically improve.
And Jacob, we will get to your question after we answer Matt's here. Should I trade A.J. Brown, Logan Thomas, Bijan, and Josh Palmer for Breece Hall, Cooper Kupp, Hawkinson, and Aaron Jones? I would not. I would want to.
Getting rid of A.J. Brown and Bijan's a lot.
I would want to, because Breece Hall, he didn't play well this past week. The game script didn't really favor running the ball. But he did catch a lot of passes.
They played the Giants. If the game script ain't going to help him against the Giants, when is it?
The Giants are a weird defense team this year. Cooper Kupp, again, going to Matt Stafford. I think Cooper Kupp is going to thrive going forward, but A.J. Brown is already thriving. Hawkinson,
and the thing is you don't know how long that quarterback change is going to be there in the Rams. I would stick with what you got in Bijan and A.J. Brown. I definitely understand the desire to upgrade a tight end, but this is not the way I would go about it.
What I would try to do, Matt, is there's a lot of trades about evening things out and not making yourself weaker at one position or not, but in this situation, I think this is a trade that's trying to do a lot of evening up by trading tight end for tight end, wide receiver and wide receiver for wide receiver. What I would think about doing is, if I would still go after Hawkinson. Out of all those guys on that list of players that to go after, Matt, my number one to go after would be Hall. My number two is Hawkinson.
Quite frankly, Matt, if you can simplify it to, instead of including A.J. Brown, if you could do Bijan and Thomas for Breece and the Hawk, that might be worth entertaining.
I mean,
I would lean that way as a much fairer and simpler trade.
Honestly, you might have to give Palmer, Bijan, and Thomas to get Breece Hall and Hawkinson at this point in time. Brees Hall has a high value, Joe. Is extremely
No, I
high
get
value.
it.
And so
But
does Hawkinson.
But
So
I don't want to get rid of A.J. Brown on
I'd simplify it, Matt. Send us a couple more of what you might be thinking about, and we can help you think about it. But I definitely think you can't give up A.J. Brown. He's too elite right now to give up. And Jacob here, and we'll get to your question here, Stephen, in a moment. How are we feeling about Hopkins tonight? Don't want to get caught up with how great he was last week. Start him or plug in Deontay Johnson in PPR? That's a tough question. Joe and I were talking earlier about the volume that Deontay Johnson is lined up for tonight. Kenny Pickett's healthy. Mitch Trubisky's not seeing the field, hopefully. And so DeAndre Hopkins, the Steelers
Minkin's not playing.
The Steelers
so
have
there's reason to think he can get behind
secondary.
The team.
The Steelers have a pretty weak secondary. And Joe put out this stat where deeper threat wide receivers do better against the Steelers than the intermediate route runners.
Same with the taller ones.
And so DeAndre Hopkins fits the profile of the taller, elite, deep threat wide receiver. Unfortunately, this game looks like it could be a low-scoring game. I mean, the
weather's not going to be a problem as I look out my window.
The numbers on FanDuel have gone – the spread has gone down in terms of if there's going to be 6 or more touchdowns scored in this game. It was once at like 400. Now it's at 360. People are thinking Will Levis is going to go off again.
It's not going to happen. This is my reason why I'm going Johnson, because your question basically was Hopkins or Johnson tonight.
Yeah.
I'm going Johnson for the volume.
Tingley and
my thing is Levis
Don will get to your question.
Coming off of a short week in the NFL, coming into the best pass rush in the NFL. Maybe San Francisco just jumped it, but if not, 1A for the best pass rush in the NFL. And rookies in pressure like that tend to crumble. Now, does that mean that Hopkins doesn't get a deep bomb or two? It might happen. But in terms of projectable, game script wise, Deontay is the game script. He got almost 20 targets last week. He is going to be who Pickens throws the ball to over and over and over again. So while Hop is more likely to get a touchdown, I believe, I do think that there's a chance this game tonight becomes stupid punt fest from both sides of the ball, and all we see is sacks over and over again. And I'm going, because of the PPR, I'm going Johnson.
And I agree with Joe. So if you are looking for the standout, I mean, Deontay Johnson hasn't scored a touchdown in it feels like a lifetime.
Year and a half at least.
And so Hopkins is your better bet to score, and it seems likely that Hopkins will at least get 4 to 6 receptions. What he does with those 4 to 6 receptions, it could be 50 yards, it could be 80 yards, it could be 120 yards. That is the question, and he is more likely to score a touchdown. Now, with Deontay is more likely to get six catches, 8 catches, 10 catches, 60 yards to 80 yards. And I don't see a touchdown in his future. So it's pretty, in my mind, it's pretty even when you include the touchdowns in this perspective.
I just lean towards home team on Thursday Night Football, not a rookie quarterback.
So I'm going Deontay, but it's close.
It's closer than it should be. Let's put it that way.
Very, very close. So let's go. Thanks, Jacob, for the question. Let's go to Stephen, Tingley, Sean, and then LeBron's here. I love the name LeBron's. Pick one.
He's back. I love you, LeBron's.
Pick one, half PPR, Gus Edwards, Godwin, or Pickens. Edwards has got a chest thing, they said. I was trying to trade for Edwards this week, actually. Edwards has a chest thing going on. Godwin, Godwin has been solid. This whole season, he's been friggin' rock solid. They play the Texans, which has a pretty good pass defense. I think, for me...
Bob, rank them out for tonight and then for rest of the year as well.
Okay, so I think I have Godwin, Edwards, and Pickens for tonight, or for this week.
Yeah.
That would be my order. And then for the year, Godwin, Pickens, Gus Edwards, I think was how I would order them for the rest of the year. But tonight, in a half PPR, I think, or for this week, half PPR, Texans, Godwin seems to be, it's weird because Evans is getting a lot of play. Obviously, he's one of the top wide receivers on the team, getting some decent touchdown numbers. But Godwin is very, very reliable. You look at that game against Buffalo, Godwin, they didn't really pass the ball like a tremendous amount to wide receivers in that game. Mike Evans and Godwin both didn't do anything in that game. Rachaad White was the guy that Baker Mayfield relied on to move the ball downfield against Buffalo. But for me, in this week, I think it lines up better against this defense that they're going to focus a lot on Mike Evans, and there's probably going to be a decent amount of space either over the top or in a zone to do something really well for Godwin. So I have Godwin in that list right there.
Yeah, for this week, I have Godwin as well. But had the Steelers been playing on Sunday, it would be Pickens, because everything we just said about Deontay getting all the targets is fair and true. One thing about George Pickens is he doesn't sit well when he don't get at least a couple balls thrown his way. By couple, I mean at least 8. So I believe long run moving forward, Pickens is going to end up getting the same level of targets as Godwin. Since he's a more talented player, I'd go that way. And I don't foresee the Gus bus being relevant long term. It's just the way it is. But the thing with Baltimore is they can put up 500 rushing yards on you without you even feeling it. And that's just what they do. It's annoying to watch those dirty birds. All right, Tingley, what do we got here? PPR got offered Pollard and Diggs for Kamara. Yeah, dude. I mean, if you can get Diggs, take it. I don't really think that there's a much of a debate there.
I mean, that's crazy to me that you got offered Pollard and Diggs for Kamara. Now, Kamara has been putting up, he's been putting up 20 points or above because he's been getting a tremendous amount of receptions. This looks like the Kamara that we've been known to like.
I don't think he's going to last, though.
But I mean, you have concerns about Pollard and Diggs. Yeah, I mean, that's true. Your wide receiver room is Puka, Devonta Smith, Flowers, and Lockett and Dell. It upgrades it a good amount. But going to get depth, you have your running backs as Etienne, Kamara, and Pacheco, A-Chain, and Roshan. Trying to keep my stud. Should I accept it? I mean, here's the thing.
Diggs is a stud. I'd do that.
Here's the thing. Diggs is an absolute stud. Pollard is a potential to be a stud. At this point in time, Etienne and Pacheco could be your starting running backs if that's what you're comfortable with, and then you sit on Pollard. Or you trade Pollard for somebody else. Because this trade lines up with either I want Diggs or I want Kamara. And Pollard,
I'd rather have Diggs. Pollard
to me is an asset that could be an ascending asset. You're buying extremely low after 2 bad games. And you have the luxury in your lineup right now that you don't have to start him right now because you can put a wide receiver in your flex position and be in a really good spot. But come next week, if you don't do this trade, like we said, the weather plays a role in Buffalo for sure, 100%.
It's still a top 10 receiver.
Kamara plays in the dome, but this is an incredible trade offer, and I think it's a smash accept for me. I think it really is.
So start 2, Henry, Thomas, and Swift. I'm going the order you wrote them is how I'm ranking them.
Yeah. That's where I'm at too, Sean. I think this game in Pittsburgh tonight is going to be
Henry run the ball.
Is going to be one of those games where they're going to establish the run. The Steelers do have a great pass rush,
but they do not have a good run defense.
And in order to get past a pass rush, what's the best thing to do is to run the ball. You have one of the best running backs to have ever played in the last 10 years. Henry's the play there, and JT. Although JT hasn't gotten the goal line work over Zach Moss, the yardage has increased over the weeks. I think that JT and Henry are my starts there. And I'm not even looking back at Swift. I think he's going to have a solid game, but Henry and JT for me are the starts there. So thanks for the question.
So LeBron's, we actually were talking about this a little bit earlier, about an hour or so ago, with the Raiders. What are they going to be? when you get a coach who says, I've been a Raider my whole life and now I get to make them again, there means one simple thing. We're throwing the ball downfield to the fastest player we have, and we're doing power running up the middle. And the fastest player the Raiders have right now is Myers. So everything I just said earlier about rookie quarterback, crazy pass rush, Thursday Night Football on the road really, really weighs into this decision for me. For tonight, I'm benching Hopkins and playing Myers because I want to see what it's like when they run loose. And I think that both of them, I think Hopkins will probably outcatch him, but I think Myers will outproduce him.
I'm starting Hopkins. I don't think you can start two Raiders. You have Devontae Adams and you have Cooper Kupp. I don't think you can start Adams and Myers.
Wait, you have Adams too?
I don't think
you got to go
Hopkins. I think you have to start Hopkins. And I want to get back to Steven's question. Steven, if you're still here, when we look at where Godwin might line up against the cornerbacks this week, he's got a pretty decent matchup, and Mike Evans does not. Mike Evans is lining up against supposedly Steven Nelson on
that never works out.
And Nelson is ranked fairly good, with pass protect or stopping the wide receiver. And Godwin could feast in this game, whereas this could be a game where Evans does not. And so that's one of the other reasons why I like Godwin. And to go back, Tingley, here to your trade, if you're still with us, Diggs and Pollard for Kamara here. Your team is rock solid. I mean, you've got a lot of fluidity in terms of like where you could put your boom players at, because Dell, Flowers, and Lockett could potentially boom at any week. A-Chain, when he comes back, will be a boom player for you. And giving up Kamara is rough, but this makes your team much better, where you don't have to rely on a Lockett in the flex, and you could really take off with that team. So that's kind of where I'm at there on that. Nino, welcome to the show, Nino. Dobbs versus the Rams or Warren tonight for the flex? Joe, I'll let you handle that one first.
Yeah, so for me, I don't want to touch Warren tonight, and for a couple of reasons. The first is that when we look at what I project this game to be, it's going to be a slog. And one thing with Tomlin is that anytime, and he has an 18-year history of this, anytime someone shows up trying to be a more powerful or physical team than the Steelers, Tomlin has to prove they're wrong, which means he's going to put Najee Harris running right up the middle 50 times, and then occasionally on third and long, which will be a lot, he's going to check the ball down to Deontay Johnson. That will be the Pittsburgh Steelers offense tonight. So there is no room for power-heavy hitting in Jaylen Warren's game. That's a fact of life. So I think this has a very good chance of being Warren's worst game of the season. That being said, he also can catch one and break a 60-yard touchdown. But the reason I'm going with Dubes here, I say his name wrong every time, is volume. It's straight up volume. I don't believe Warren's going to get it, and I believe that the Packers don't have a choice. So when we say that, that's the reason I list that way. I'm also, if you guys are looking for I need to play Najee in a flex situation, or you got bye week guys, Najee's not a horrible play tonight. He's going to get a ton of carries, probably unproductive ones, but it's the Steelers, and they can't be out physical, so they're going to keep handing the ball off over and over and over again.
So, and Nino, I'm on Dobbs as well. Against the Rams at face value, you're saying, well, maybe the matchup's not great. You should line up against Witherspoon. Witherspoon is beatable. The Rams, if we remember, they got super, they can get super torched. They're very capable. They're very capable of getting torched like that. Christian Watson, although I'm down on most Packers, Christian Watson could have a nice game this week because he has that top speed to get past the secondary. And Dobbs running the intermediate routes, Dobbs could be valuable in the red zone. I think that it's Dobbs, no doubt here for me too. So Heat, welcome to the show, Heat. Do I play Warren or Osborne at the flex? This is a tough decision. Joe just told you why Warren wouldn't be a play and Dobbs would be, but Osborne here is a different story.
Yeah, Osborne's not the go-to.
Josh Dobbs, here's the thing. We know that Dobbs can get it to Hawkinson, and we know that Dobbs will try his best to get it to Addison like he did with Hollywood Brown. But also we started seeing these other wide receivers in Arizona show up as you're like, who is that guy? Who is that guy? Michael Wilson? Who are you? Who are you? Who are you? Who are you? I think Osborne's the play. I own Osborne, but I'm not starting him because I'm flexing Rishi Rice and Zach Moss. Because of those dirty little goal line touchdowns, I want to try to get one of those. But I don't
think you are though. I think that day has sailed.
I start Osborne over Warren, and I wouldn't look back. I don't think Warren is a good play today. I do think Osborne is a sneaky play.
Yeah, but before you jump to the next one, I just want to do a quick hit on that Vikings setup now. I do believe that the new pecking order post Cousins is still without a doubt going to be Hawk first, Addison second, but I now think that Akers has stepped up to be the third scorer on that team, ahead of Osborne, because
I don't disagree with
you're
that.
not going to throw the ball as much when you don't have Cousins. And remember,
Dobbs does.
Well, Dobbs does, but the one thing about Minnesota is they let their quarterback get hit more than anyone else, and Dobbs isn't exactly proven to be an Iron Man, and I believe they're going to lay off that a little bit. And Akers has surpassed Madison, and Akers is going to be the one to continue with that. So just a quick hit on Minnesota there. But Bob, jump to the next question here. I got a little
follow-up.
sidetrack.
I want to follow up with Heat, and then I want to follow up with Nino.
Okay.
You're welcome, Heat. Singletary, I think, is a nice speculative waiver ad here because Singletary, to me, Pierce doesn't have whatever we were looking for. Singletary, at least, when he has the ball, he seems to be doing something with them. I don't think it's a great, because here's the thing about Houston. They have I read a stat somewhere. I think that their yards, like the yards before first contact, right?
It's horrible in Houston.
They're negative.
Yeah.
Their running backs are getting hit behind the line of scrimmage. So neither running back is something that I want to own. But if I were speculatively adding somebody, it wouldn't be Wan'Dale Robinson.
In fact, actually, you might have this guy in your waivers. You might just be overlooking him. Bob brought him up before, but the Peoples-Jones, the law firm of Donovan Peoples-Jones is what I'm thinking there. Because there's a chance that hits. Especially when the inevitable injury bug hits the wide receiver room in Detroit. They like checking the ball downfield.
Yeah, but
that wouldn't be my speculative one moving forward.
But to your
over
question
both
here,
of those guys.
To your question here, Heat, I would not drop Warren or Osborne.
No,
Singletary. I wouldn't do it. I would at least wait another week or two to see what shakes down in Minnesota, but I would not do this. I think it would be. I think it would be too early to say on this. But I would keep who you have and then wait another week because I don't think Devin Singletary will have a blow-up game at all at any one point in time. But yeah, I would stick pat with what I have. So Nino, unfortunately, I'm not huge on the trade you made. I understand that K9 has a tough schedule, but for me, this comes down to the potential of Higgins long-term across this season. This trade is basically Kupp and Ridley because Warren is getting to that point where he is a flex play if he's not already at it right now. But Ridley, as we've talked about throughout the entire show, I'm not sure where the positive regression, as people say, is at. He's just not getting it.
He's so talented, they're going to give him the ball is essentially the argument.
That's the argument.
It's the George Pickens argument too, by the way, people.
But that's the argument. But, Evans is a touchdown guy. We've known this from the start. If you go back and watch our stuff, we weren't really liking anybody from Tampa going into this season. We thought the Tampa players were getting drafted too high. The one player we were saying that maybe is high, but not as high as the others was Rashad White. Rashad White, we knew was going to get the checkdowns and all of that nonsense that comes with that.
Yeah.
Now, to the point, Kupp, right? Kupp is on a team where now Matt Stafford is hurt. We don't know how hurt. They say with the UCL in the throwing hand, they're not putting him on IR. But to even say that was even a possibility makes me think that Kupp, who runs all of those intermediate routes, is going to definitely be a beneficiary of Stafford not being able to throw the ball very far.
Mm-hmm.
So getting Kupp in any situation is a win. But the players you gave up to get Kupp and the return you got, I'm not a huge fan on it. I think the Kupp will be super successful, and Ridley has the chance to be. But Warren is kind of an afterthought in my mind. And I would have tried to do something different. But I think you got a decent enough return, but I'm not thrilled about it.
That's fair. Yeah, I think Bob pretty much just nailed it on the head right there.
And thanks. Yeah, we appreciate you too. So I think going for Osborne, wishing the best. And that's what we do in fantasy football, right? Is we set the lineup. We look at all the research that we can possibly look at. We yell at ourselves when somebody on our bench goes off for 30 points. And we go to the next week. And we hope that we won. We hope that we can get to the next week. We're getting into that playoff situation, week 9. If you're 7-1, 6-2, this game before the big Eagles bye week next week, and then later on we've got a Chiefs bye week coming up. Then we've got a lot of high scoring offenses getting a bye weeks in the coming weeks. And
we also need a lot of these high scoring offenses in the middle of the pack to become high scoring offenses.
Yeah,
like that. That's part of what we're waiting for as well. There's so much talent in this NFL that's not being utilized. I love to see the Phillies starting to share it and really truly grow instead of just being the AJ Brown show and grow there. But let's finish off here with the best bets, Bob.
So hold on, Nino's got a follow-up question here. Let's get to a tight end question. Laporta's on bye, so should I get Taysom, Okanakwu, Musgrave, Otten, Njoku? Here's obviously Ferguson isn't out there, or you would have said Ferguson. I like Ferguson this week. I also like, if Logan Thomas is healthy, he's a good option too. Out of the tight ends that you mentioned, who do I think is going to score? Taysom.
Yeah.
Who do I think has a chance to get a garbage touchdown from the 1 yard line? Otten. Who do I think who's not going to do anything? Okanakwo and Njoku. I mean, Njoku's so disappointing. The Cleveland as a pass catching team is just weird, and it's not something I want. And Musgrave hasn't done what we thought he was going to do since a couple weeks ago. So in order, I definitely go after Taysom this week.
Yeah.
And maybe you'll get that 1 yard touchdown like you got last week, and you'll be good to go. All these options are very touchdown dependent. So go with the one who at least gets the ball, and that would be Taysom.
Yeah, and on part of that, Taysom is going to do something crazy at least once a year. The other one's not. I mean, you're rolling a 1 in 17 dice that you might go, whoa, guy got 3 stupid rushing touchdowns because that's what the Saints do. Yeah, I would go that way.
It's a boom play. It's really is.
Well, the other ones are no plays. So
and King and then Trout. So King is Joe.
I bought twice. I did it
same time. 10-man PPR. Which two do I start? Wide receiver Deontay, Pittman, T, and Olave. Well, Deontay's a definite start for both me and Joe this week.
Oh, no, not with that group. Not for me. Take that back.
No, I'm saying
Higgins and Olave. I'm taking them all day.
See, for me, where I'm getting this at, I love the potential of Deontay Johnson this week. I think that Deontay is going to go for a lot of yards. I am down on T. Higgins. He has.
Dude, they're playing the Bills.
He's playing the Bills. The Bills, I mean,
they did just pick up a corner from.
Yeah,
from
I'm not going to say that Baker's amazing, but like we said, we saw what they did to Tampa, and the Bills they need to win, and so do the Bengals. But the Patriots kind of got over on the Bills here. Mac Jones threw for two touchdowns. Keelan Bourne had 63 yards. The Bills stopped the Giants. The Jaguars beat the Bills. This is the game where Christian Kirk or Calvin Ridley had 122 yards. So I see Chase being the guy that's going to score the points in that game and not T. And for me, even though Pittman hasn't been seen until the second half of
he's a
games,
volume machine, though.
The volume machine is there. The Panthers have a really decent pass defense and a really terrible rush defense.
That's true.
So Pittman might not be the answer for me there. So then it comes down to, do I like Deontay, T, or Olave? And, I'm going with Deontay and Olave, and I'm leaving Pittman and T on the bench. That's
and I'm taking Deontay off because it's Thursday night. I in general, Saturday or Sunday receivers score more than Thursday ones, and I want to roll those dice. I mean, that's. I believe that there's a very real chance that this ends up being 14 punts and just stupid football tonight.
And Trout, yes. When you listen to talk radio in Pittsburgh this morning, Cam Hayward's
better, because if not, Henry's getting 200 yards.
Cam Henry's back, and we need Cam Hayward back in Pittsburgh for the Steelers to do well. Their run defense right now is garbage. Cam Hayward can change that, but Cam Hayward also has to get used to football activities right now in a game situation. He's a vet. He's a great vet. He's a phenomenal vet.
But he can only fill up one gap.
But you can only do so much. And where you have TJ Watt, you're probably not running towards TJ Watt. You're not running towards Cam
Actually,
Hayward.
I bet they do run at Watt. If I was Tennessee looking at this game plan here, with Cam Hayward being the defensive tackle opposite of Watt, I would run at Watt because Ogunjobi is starting to wear down, and Montravius Adams is a gap shooter.
Mm-hmm.
And if you catch him on the wrong gap, Henry can go. Of all the players tonight, Henry's the one I'm most confident in by far. If we're talking just tonight's game, it goes Henry by a mile, and then comes down to probably Deontay and Hopkins in terms of confidence for fantasy points and PPR. So I just think that's the way it is. And Cam does make a big difference, but the simple fact is the Steelers' interior defensive linemen leave a lot to be desired.
Yeah.
So, Bob, let's unless we got any more questions here coming up, and I missed one, let's jump into our bets. And by the way, 62% on the year, crazy good. I'm going to go through these fast because we have more of them than usual this week.
Before we get to that, going back to this question right here from Ahmed, T. Higgins doesn't have a very good matchup. He faces off against Rasul Douglas, doesn't have a very good matchup if they stay man-to-man in coverage there. And for Pittman, when we look at Indy here, Pittman has a similar rated matchup against Dante Jackson. And then Olave is like right there in between as well. So I think Deontay is the definite start for me in that situation again. Because he should go off against Murphy Bunting, which it's definitely beatable there. And then it's kind of a roll the dice. Who do you like better? Who do you have a better chance of scoring a touchdown there? Pittman's been scoring weird touchdowns. Olave feels like he hasn't scored in a long time. If you believe the it's due category, then it's got to be T. But
yeah. Which I do.
If you believe in what you see, then Olave seems to be the play there.
So Bob, to hit up the answer here on the bets here, to dive into these fun things. First game is going to take us into Boston once again. Washington in New England. The over-under is at 40.5. Both of these offenses bad. I mean, there's no way around it. Together, they average 37 a game. But their defenses together average 50 a game. And I got this thing projected out as a 44-point game, give you a 3.5-point edge on the over in New England. The second one, And Bob, I'm just going to read this to you. You tell me if this even sounds right. The Chicago Bears are going to New Orleans, and New Orleans is a 8.5-point favorite. That's the right expression, because New Orleans is not scoring any points this year. Chicago gets stupid, dirty stuff. This game should only be a 4-point spread. Take those points for you Bear fans out there. You're still losing the game, but at least it's going to be closer than a touchdown. Next one. This is the second week in a row we're going double Cleveland games. Cleveland playing Arizona. Yeah, it's a new quarterback in Arizona. True. But
it's also Clayton Tune.
Yeah, it's also true. But that leads to pick sixes, which leads to helping the over. We're projecting this game to be at a 44-point score. The over-under is at 37.5. One of the biggest gaps of the week to be able to jump on this. The other part of this is they're playing Tune. They ain't going to be in this one. This is one of these games where I'd project Ford to just go off. Cleveland's going to have one of those stupid running games like Miami had earlier in the year, and they're going to easily control this one. I think
Ford has to be healthy, though.
Cleveland's going to win by 12 nonetheless.
Ford has to be healthy, or else it's going to be Hunt getting those scores.
It don't matter who gets them. Mm-hmm. They're going to completely control the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. So that's 4 of the bets. 2 more remaining here. I said this one earlier. The New York Giants in Vegas hit the over hard on this. The Giants can't stop anyone. The Vegas can't stop anyone. And they're going to be chucking the ball downfield, showing that he's a new coach and he's capable. That's going to be a sneaky, high-scoring game, mostly because neither defense shows up.
Actually, I disagree with that, but I know the numbers don't.
It's 37. It's hard not to get the 30s. It really is. Yeah, that's 5 touchdowns. That's it.
I mean, Buffalo and the Giants didn't get the 37, so.
Which is ironic that you brought to that game, the Sunday night game, the cream of the league, the Bills going to the Bengals. It's at 49.5. Everyone's expecting these giant high-scoring games. But historically, when the Bills play one of the other division winners, they keep it low-scoring and they muck it up a little bit. And they bring Allen in. And when they bring Allen in, they score less. And because of that, I'm not saying they're not going to score. I still believe it's going to be a 45 total. But that is 4.5 points less than your over-under. So the under on Sunday Night Football, which is against the norm, it's against the populace, but that's where the edge is. So, Bob, any other closing thoughts for tonight's action?
Tonight's action, I think I really want the Steelers to win. I really want them to win. I think the game is going to be fairly close. I think the Steelers are going to win probably by 3. I see a sneaky safety in this game, actually, because this game is just – it's between 2 teams that could plot in the trenches, but they have an elite wide receiver that can get them over the top. It's just, will they use it? Because Tennessee is a completely beatable defense. The Steelers are a completely beatable defense. I hate to say it. But in terms of tonight's game, tonight's action, I wouldn't be surprised to see this game be like a 21-17 game. I wouldn't be surprised to see something like a weird score like 22-16. Scorigami's probably going to go crazy in this one because Kenny Pickett is a susceptible quarterback. Will Levis, this is the second game. He could easily throw an interception or 2. Steelers can run one back. The Tennessee Titans can run one back as well. Najee could be a great play this week, but the Titans do have a good enough run defense, except for when they played Cleveland. Except for when they played Indianapolis that one game. So where I fall on that is I think the Steelers are going to win. I think it's going to be close. I think there's going to be decent scoring in the game. I don't see a lot of touchdowns, and I do see a safety somewhere.
I am feeling that Henry is going to control this game. The Titans are going to have north of 35 minutes of possession. The Steelers are going to be inept, and the only way the Steelers win is if their defense scores, which I'm not discounting the possibility of a strip sack and that happening. Well, I think that's the game plan in Pittsburgh. It's can they survive in Epps' offense?
The thing that benefits the Titans in this game, and the thing that benefits Henry and Spears to that matter, is the fact that even with Cam Hayward back,
it's a bad run defense.
The Steelers offense is and this is what we
said. They're
guaranteed
about 6 punts a game.
This is what we said about Deontay Johnson is he's going to get volume, but the Steelers don't have to score with that volume. So like you could see this as the Steelers on one series starting on the 25. They get 3 receptions to Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson gets a total of 13 yards. And then, then they give it to Najee for 2 runs. He doesn't do anything. So then, you're looking at one more, you got your first down. Then you're going for your second first down. Then they try to pass the ball to,
See, I'm almost certain that you're too optimistic because we haven't got a first down on our first drive all year. I think this is 2 runs up the middle for -2 yards. We're throwing it to Deontay for an 8-yard catch short of the sticks.
Yeah.
And then we'll start the punts.
But what I'm saying is that for Deontay to be a volume-based wide receiver in this game, it has to be that the Titans either are scoring a lot or the Titans also can't move the ball downfield.
And well, even I don't think there's a way Deontay's not a high volume guy because we're losing. The Steelers are losing. They're throwing the ball to Deontay regardless. And when it's 3rd and long, they're throwing the ball to Deontay.
And
regardless.
Deontay has to move the chains for the Steelers to stay in this game, and for the Steelers to
Najee has to get more than 4 a carry.
Well, Matt Canada has to call a better game, because that's possible.
Well, yeah.
Right?
So nonetheless, Bob, you want to break down the trade that you're going through here real quick?
Yeah. So I'm trying to get Tony Pollard, and the guy I'm trading wants to get back. I'm trying to get Pollard and Zay Flowers, and he thinks that Devonta Smith and Zay Flowers are even on the same level rest of the season, and he thinks that Brian Robinson hasn't produced as a running back 2 right now, even though scoring wise he has been at running back 8. He has like 6 people on bye this week, and I'm trying to go volume with talent, and trading him Jacoby. Who did I say? Jacoby, Brian Robinson, Zach Moss, and I even offered Tank Dell or Rishi Rice in the trade as well to get Pollard, or to get Pollard and Flowers, or to get Pollard and Shaheed, and he just won't budge on Pollard.
So I think the answer is you're just not doing a trade.
I'm just not doing it. Sean, D-Hop, or Waddle. In terms of this week, when we go back, let me look at the matchup real quick here. When we take a look at Miami's,
that's not a hard one. Thursday night road receivers. I'm not loving it. I'm not loving the rookie on the short week. I think the pressure. Tennessee's winning this game by running it, not by throwing it. And basically, Miami said they don't care who they play; they'll score. So,
but here's the thing.
Waddle in kind of a not have to think situation.
For me, I'm the opposite, Sean. DeAndre Hopkins has an incredible matchup against Patrick Peterson.
Oh no, he's not going against Peterson. He's going against Porter.
I don't think so, man.
Dude, Joey Porter Jr. will be covering him because they've been torched by tall receivers. I'm almost going to guarantee Porter will be on. Well, of course, the Steelers play left to right. They can. If the Titans want it to be Hopkins on Peterson, they just got to put him on the right-hand side. So that's also true.
So, I mean, I think that D-Hop has a good boom potential this week in this game, and Waddle's boom potential, I think, will fall to Tyreek Hill again.
Honestly, I think I think that they're gonna try to put up 1 million to show that they're the real team in the AFC, and I think Waddle's gonna be part of it. I want every single ounce of that game because I don't see this being like when Kansas City plays the Bills and they run the ball and they play it cautiously. I think Kansas City is going to say, you want to run a drag race? We can run it better than you. And I really believe that Waddle's going to be a big part of that. I want every player in that Kansas City-Miami game, and I want them now. I think it's going to be by far the highest scoring game of the week. And don't get hit with a Thursday night regret, man. Jump on that Waddle bus and hit it
and
hard.
there's that too, Joe. I mean, we always say when we look at Thursday night games, they do benefit running backs. They do benefit tight ends. Unfortunately, the Steelers don't have a pass catching tight end that's really good right now.
That's healthy, yeah.
The Titans don't have a really good pass catching tight end right now, but they do have running backs, in Henry and in Najee that will move, that should be able to move the ball. They do have underneath threats in Westbrook Ikine and in Deontay Johnson that can move the chains. Treylon Burks, we're yet to see what's going to happen with Treylon Burks. Could be a blow up for him. But again, it's going to be cold here in Pittsburgh. It's going to be, I think, about 40.
It's going to be cold, but there ain't going to be no rain.
It's not going to be rainy. It's going to be cold. DeAndre also, coming off that toe injury, and, short week toe injury. I like him, but, he has that boom potential to get that touchdown, like I said. But, Waddle is a stud. He's already a stud. Mm-hmm. We know it. So if you feel comfortable going into the week knowing that, Waddle has an equal amount of potential to put up the same number of touchdowns as DeAndre Hopkins, but possibly with a less amount of yards, because these Kansas City games recently have been extra weird, where the opposite team's wide receivers aren't doing as well as we thought, but then some games they are. And it's like, what's happening here? How are they coveraging? What's their coverage scheme? How often are they switching it? Next week I'll try to get. There's a really good metric to look at, and it's a chart about good defenses, and the chart is how often defenses change their defensive scheme on a game like in a game versus how good they are. And do you want to know the team did change their coverages?
Yeah.
Do you want to know what team is exactly in the middle of this chart?
Probably Kansas City.
The Minnesota Vikings.
Okay.
They are this season the most average defense pass-wise that you can possibly come across, because
they got 3 veteran safeties, so they can play different styles. That makes sense.
Right. And man, I wish I could find that chart, because it was on my Twitter. Let me see if I can find it, because it was the coolest chart that I had ever seen. Oh man, it was a couple days ago. I'll wait till
send it over, Bob. We'll get it up next week. We'll have a graphic of it.
Yeah, we'll have that graph going, because it was I forget who produced it, but the graph was so interesting, because it was the Cleveland Browns have a good defense, but they never change the coverages. They always run out the same coverages. So if you can beat one, you could beat them consistently all the time.
Well, teams that have elite pass rushes can get away with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's the ones that can't. That's the fundamental thing. I would suspect that you don't see a lot of different coverage change from the Steelers or the Niners either. For that reason, you're going to get sacked. So why do we need to figure out multiple things? It's also a mentality of coaches. Do I want to have my players have to know a lot of different things, or would I rather just drill one thing into them like a Marine, so muscle memory takes over everything? I personally lean in doing different schematics, and that's how I lean in it. But each coach has their own preference with the rest of it, and that's the way it is. I would imagine Harbaugh is one of the ones that has a lot of different looks. Same with the Patriots. Patriots in Baltimore tend to be high in that list.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, there's a lot of moving parts. That's what I would want from my coaching staff. I'd want them to switch it up a lot, make things harder to figure out, and then boom, we're getting sacks. You're getting confused. That's how you make teams look bad, if you confuse them.
Right. All right, everybody. We're gonna log off for the day. Hopefully everybody has a good time in their matchups this week. We wish everybody good luck. Hopefully you'll join us back next week. And
See you Thursday, guys.
We'll talk football again on Thursday. We love Thursday, but Thursday night football, it's time for action. But we'll see what happens today.
We'll see, Bob.